Today is the 29th of August 2020, and this is now for the first time a full episode in English of the Touchdown Steelers podcast. My name, as always, is Erik Forsström, and as always, commentating on the last three final games of the regular season in the Maple League is none other than Tuukka Heiskanen. Welcome back, mate.
Oh, thanks for that. And I really hope I would have a easier name to pronounce for English-speaking folks. The double U and double K there usually cause a little bit of problems. So don't expect us to be perfect with our pronunciation if we have to call out each other out by name, because that's gonna make our Finnish brains think we're speaking Finnish.
Yes. The reason why we're doing this today in English, because I think that deserves an explanation, is that I have received some requests, particularly from the parents of Steelers import players, that they would love to hear a podcast sometimes in English and not just an interview of an English-speaking player. And I decided, well, why not? At least once we can provide that. So we will be talking in the language of the Londonese about the final round of the Maple League, which for all extents and purposes has finished in a very pro-Steelers fashion. I will take us first, though, to the biggest news of the entire week. And I'll start with this with a bit from last week. We speculated a lot about the scenarios that were possible during the last round of the Maple League. And we were quite confident. I mean, everything was based upon the fact that the Roosters were going to beat the Wolverines because they made such short work of the Wasa Royals, who were the second unbeaten team in the Maple League. And we were pretty sure that if the Roosters managed to do such short work of the Royals, they are definitely going to be going to the playoffs, and then they're going to be going to the Maple Bowl, and then hopefully Steelers gets to beat them in the final. But against all probabilities, perhaps, or perhaps other people were expecting different results, but the Wolverines beat the Roosters, and the Finnish American football scene will not be quite the same anymore, because this is the end of the 8-year winning streak, or not perhaps the end of the dynasty, because if they come back next year and win again, we can still call it very much a dynasty, but the winning streak of 8 consecutive years of winning the Finnish championship is over. How does that make you feel?
Kind of weird, actually. Like you said, everything went against probabilities. Gridiron, actually, the Finnish American football news site, actually does like a weekly poll on who do you think is going to win, and they had Roosters as 87.1% to win. So most definitely a big surprise. I personally would have put Roosters even as a bigger favorite than 87%, closer to like 90 to 95 range. So first of all, for the Roosters, the 8 consecutive victories of the Maple Bowl, not to even make it to the playoffs is absolutely huge.
Indeed.
And it's just like, even still, it's kind of hard to believe how, from such a strong showing against the Royals, the Roosters team then went on. Obviously, there's a lot of good stuff that the Wolverines did. No, I'm not going to take anything away from them, but still, the lack of discipline and this like very different Roosters that we've used to being seen. Like they had so many penalties. One of them was extremely detrimental to their success, which was
We're talking about Gentile here, right?
Yes, Mike Gentile getting tossed out the game in the first quarter. Just like in general, just it didn't look like the red machine of the Roosters that was just consistent, disciplined football team that we've used to seeing.
And this was so weird because against the Royals, Gentile had a very nice showing, and the return of Kimi Linnainmaa to give an extra target to Miro Kadmiri, it really seemed to be a great boon for the team. And of course, we were expecting that to continue against the Wolverines, but for some strange reason, that did not occur. Gentili, as you just said, he got kicked out of the game during the first quarter. First, he got a personal foul, and then I think, if I remember correctly, he got like 2 fouls in the same game, and that got him thrown out. And Roosters did score afterwards. I mean, after that specific interception, which gave the ball to the Wolverines and Gentili got kicked out, the Wolverines scored, but the Roosters came back immediately and scored without Gentili, and it still looked like that it could be all up for grabs, but then the Wolverines just went away with it. As far as why the Wolverines won, it's pretty clear that their quarterback Forrest here had a very great showing, made some really great plays. And this time, the use of Mickey J as a running back was a very nice touch. He was he looked quite good in the running back position. And all in all, as we've been talking throughout the season, that the Wolverines have all these names in their roster, but they just don't feel like they're playing together as a team very well. This time, the Wolverines executed very well as a team, and they definitely deserve the win from that game.
Yeah, most definitely. And mostly, I'd also say that the Wolverines defense stepped up massively compared to the earlier weeks. Especially what I liked was Ville Valasti taking like a big role, like a leadership role in the defensive line, getting a total of 7 tackles, of which 5 were for loss, which is, and 3.5 sacks also. So that's like an insane individual performance that like showed that all right, we have the individuals, and now with his, I'd say with his example, the rest of the defense was also like their morale was boosted, and they looked more confident. Like even though they were facing probably if not the most difficult opposition that they had all season, at least one of the most difficult oppositions, basically their playoff hopes on the line against the reigning 8-time champions, and they really stepped up to the plate. And I like there's okay, the game wasn't perfect for the Wolverines, but it was a massive improvement on what they've shown throughout the season. Like they've been very mediocre. They've not lived up to the hype of the caliber of names that they have on the roster. This was
even if they have won games, they haven't lived.
Yes, exactly. Like, but this was probably the first game of the entire season when you could say that the Wolverines lived up to their expectations. Like this was the first game when they played as a team instead of just a bunch of individuals, which it's a good sign for the Wolverines, a bad sign for the rest of the league.
Yeah, another consideration to take into account is that when the season was starting and we were evaluating the Roosters and they were going with a full finish lineup, we all talked about how much depth they still have in their roster. That even if they have injuries, they have other guys to take those positions. But I guess in the end, the depth wasn't that big. In the end, I mean, the loss of Gentili was definitely felt very hard. And afterwards, Mickey J did manage to get a very nice showing, but after the injury of Miro Kadmiri, then last time Väänänen filled for Kadmiri during the Steelers game during the first week, he made 2 great plays. He made one long pass and then one running touchdown, and he played okay. Okay, today he had like a 25. Yeah, the stats say 25 attempts and 12 completions and 1 interception and 2 touchdowns. So and 3 sacks. So a good showing, but it still wasn't enough to beat the Wolverines defense this time. So I'm still gonna call him well, perhaps not star in the making, but after Kadmiri goes, I'm sure Väänänen is probably the number 2 guy for perhaps the Finnish national team quarterback.
He's got a lot of raw talent. Like that's like he has a lot of upside, and but he has a lot of similar problems that a lot of like Finnish quarterback prospects have. He doesn't have a lot of game experience on the highest level, especially in the Maple League. He has traveled a lot. He's been playing abroad as well, and he does have experience, yes, but it's still like it's hard to develop like instantly from a backup quarterback positions into a starting role, especially when you're thrown in the middle of a game for an injured quarterback. Like that's
Yeah.
something like you should have a little bit of limited expectations on what you can do, just because you've sat on the bench during game time all year. It's still a very different thing going up against people in practice and actual game time. And I would really hope to see that if nothing else, well, obviously there's a little bit of a stigma in the Maple League that you can't succeed without a import
Yeah,
quarterback, which is kind
definitely
of a
so.
it's a little bit of a toxic mentality when it comes to like people, for example, like Vananen, because it stifles a lot of Finnish quarterback prospects development. Because, for example, Katmiri played receiver for a long time in the Maple League before he got the quarterback position in the lower divisions, actually with the Steelers, and
Mm.
then eventually into the Maple League with the departure of Brandon Connect and the Roosters. So it's kind of a weird situation but I do definitely see an upside there. It's just a little bit of a problem also with the mentality and the state of the league, in a way that nobody really wants to have a Finnish quarterback because it's seen as too big of a gamble.
Well, as far as that game goes, the Roosters lost and their winning streak is now over. They have lost their playoff berth, and in a true Finnish way, when like nothing's ever good enough. Like when the thing that I want happens, it still isn't good enough. I mean, uh, of course, first of all, I have wanted for the Roosters winning streak to end for a long time. As long as the Steelers has been in the Maple League, this is the third season. Of course, I wanted it to end the very first season and the second season, another third season. Okay, so that's good that the Roosters winning streak has ended, but I still kind of wanted it to end in the playoffs. Like this feels like the Roosters going out with like a whimper now, in a
Yeah,
way.
a little bit. Obviously, like the regular season is now played, and we have the top four teams, and the top four teams that we have in going into the playoffs deserve those spots in the playoffs.
Yes, they do.
It's just that it's a little bit of a bittersweet feeling indeed, because Roosters are always known to be like a big game team basically. But when you consider that this game basically was their first playoff game, all right, technically it's a
It
regular
was.
season game,
It was.
but yeah, if the Roosters lost, they're out of the playoffs. If they win, they're in playoffs.
Yeah,
So that's
there's no sense to take the game in any other way than it being a playoff game.
yeah,
If loss takes them out of
yeah,
the competition.
exactly.
Mm.
So that's kind of the other side of the coin on that. Like the player should have realized that, all right, this is our quarterfinal.
Perhaps they did.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
maybe. And then even more deservedly,
Yeah.
the Wolverines are going forward because both of the teams. All right, the Wolverines still had a small outside shot if they lost, depending on the other games. But with them winning, they secured themselves a playoff spot, and now also took probably the biggest scalp that there is to take and ending the 8-time reigning champions winning streak. And that's a very, very big achievement, not only for the Wolverines, but I would also say for the entire Maple League in a way, because it's
Mm.
the last 8 years, and in general, the Maple League itself has had these long winning streaks. You had 8 years with the Roosters, then you had a single year when the Wolverines won. Before that, you had 6 years with the Butchers,
Yeah.
and like in general, the Finnish American football scene has been very dominated. Like it's been dominated by a single team for most of history. That single team has changed a couple of times, but still, it's obviously it's tiring for all fans. It doesn't
Very, very
matter. Like
much so.
obviously,
Yes.
if you're a hardcore Roosters fan, obviously you would want to win every single year, and you wouldn't get bored. But when it comes to like this average American football fan, the interest in the league wanes a little bit because like there's been the narrative for many years, even before the Steelers got in the Maple League. Obviously, we've been following the Maple League just because it's the highest division. The narrative has been like, all right, well, Rooster's going to win, but let's see who is going to play them in the Maple Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's really a little bit of a depressing attitude to have as a fan. But it's been like this now with the Maple League guaranteeing now that, hey, we have a new champion no matter what. That like brings a lot of fresh air to the actual
It
American
does.
football scene.
It really does, and that's the good part. And of course, with everything said, right now the strongest team in the league would seem to be, in my opinion, our own Kuopio Steelers, to which we will move next, and we will talk about the playoff prospects in a moment some more. But so after the Wolverines beat the Roosters, the game between the Wasa Royals and the Kuopio Steelers at Väinölänniemi suddenly became just a little less important, but important nevertheless, because that game decided the winner of the regular season and the first seed, and the loser of that game would end up being the second seed, and that would pretty much be the difference between. I mean, it was absolutely sure that it was going to be Wolverines in third place and Crocodiles in the fourth place, even before the last game of the Crocodiles and Butchers. So basically it was a choice between, do you want to play against the Wolverines or do you want to play against the Crocodiles in the playoffs? So that was the the bet in the game, or heck, what's the word? They were playing for the opponents, basically. That was it. And of course the glory of winning the regular season. And it was a pretty good game, all in all, as far as the Steelers' performance goes. The final score is 55-30, but there is a lot to be said about this game, especially the fourth quarter. But let's start from the beginning. This year, Steelers, if we forget the whole Seinäjoki Crocodile game, Steelers has been much better at starting the game early. They did start late against the Roosters, but all the other games have been pretty good from the start, if I recall correctly. And this time it was all Steelers until the beginning until the end of the second quarter. First it was like hold on, let me just check the stats. Yeah, Tino got a touchdown first, then Lamar Carswell ran twice to the end zone, and Zimmerman was the fourth guy who made it 0-28 after 2 minutes were played in the second quarter. And note, the score was 28-0 instead of 24-0, which means that this time Iiro Pekkarinen and the kicking team managed to get the extra points in, which was a very nice touch. But so it looked very much like the game could be almost over at that point, as far as I was concerned. I was announcing the game, and you were commentating the game for Ruutu, and the Royals then managed to score a three-point field goal, and then I think we had the final moment of the game where things could have gone. I mean, they still could have turned it around. I think it was, I don't remember if it was you or someone who sent me a message that said that Tom Brady got a comeback from a similar score from 3-28 or something. So let's see
that was the Super Bowl with the Falcons and all that.
So,
let's not annoy the Falcons fans anymore, please.
Yeah, so that was the point, and it ended going the other way around, and Steelers managed to score one more time, and the halftime score was 35-3, and it felt to be quite over at that point. An excellent first half from the Steelers. They just came right out of the gate and blew the Royals basically away. What are your thoughts on the first half?
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Just Steelers dominated the first half completely. Like the Royals had 13 yards rushing the first half. Like that's basically
Yes.
when considering what type of team the Royals are, they are most definitely a run-first team. They do have a pretty good receiving threat in Alpha Jello, but we'll get to him a little bit later,
We
what
will.
he did. But in general, I'd consider the Royals to be a run-first team. Get that, like this, a little bit more old school, grind the ball kind of team, especially with Suosta running a lot of in the middle runs, like these classic power run kind of
Yeah.
concepts. Not like
I
the
do
old
like Tom
school.
Soeste. I do like Tom Soeste. He's got this small, thick frame, a power runner in many ways, and he's had some great games. I hope he manages to still improve and become a real weapon for the Royals, but perhaps not the best showing. He did end up with I think he did end up with the reward for the best player in the team for the Royals. I think, yeah, I think he did. But still, if we look at the stats, 20 attempts, 77 yards gained, 3.7 average. So it's an okay showing, I suppose.
Yeah, but that's a lot of that's also from the second half, because in the first half the
Yeah, yeah.
Steelers just absolutely completely dominated the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
You had every
Exactly,
single
exactly. I mean, I was commentating, announcing the game, and even I managed to notice that we are totally beating them at the line of
yeah,
scrimmage.
like Suoste had zero room to run anywhere. Brandon Quinner tried a little bit of his own quarterback runs, but that was like everything was super tight, super disciplined. No matter who it was, you also always had somebody. You had Lindqvist, you had Trigueros, you had King, you had Raji, you had Wentland. Everybody in the box of the defensive box of the Steelers did exactly what they needed to do to completely demolish anything that the Royals tried to do in the first half. Like everything that the Royals tried in the first half didn't work. Like absolutely nothing. They had that one longer drive with it, what that ended up in the field goal. That was basically the only positive thing that the Royals did on offense the entire first half.
Yes.
Everything else, you had runs up the middle that were like a yard gained, and then you had another run going like an outside zone run that went -3, and then you had an pass attempt incomplete, and then you were 3 and out. And then the next
Yes.
drive, you had a run up the middle -1 yard. You had another run up the middle +1 yard, and then you had like a wide receiver sweep to the left for +4 yards, 3 and out, something
Yeah.
like this. Like this,
Yeah.
everything that the Steelers defense did on the first half was super disciplined, extremely well executed, extremely well game planned as well, and
It was.
it just showed that all right, the Steelers were ready for everything that the Royals were going to do on the first half.
Yeah. And as far as
Second
game,
half got a little bit weird.
yeah, we'll talk about the second half in a moment. And as far as game plans go, the Steelers' offense game plan worked pretty much to perfection. They had Lamar Carswell there. I mean, he had only 7 carries in the entire game, and still managed to get 2 touchdowns with a 10% with a 10-yard average. And this is the threat of Lamar Carswell, that you can never ever forget him. And Steelers doesn't even give the ball to him that often, but when they do, he is able to do some real damage. And since they have to keep an eye on Carswell all the time, Seth Peters has a field day just spreading the ball around when he needs. 29 attempts, 18 completions, could be better, but 6 touchdowns, no sacks, 259 yards. I mean, it's just, basic Steelers 2020 football. Keep the threat of Carswell and use him sparingly. And when you use, get some big gains on him and let Seth Peters do his work. And Zimmerman and Dongo were the main receivers this time. Josh Van der Veert got a couple of nice catches, but nothing that big this time. So all in all, especially during the first half, the Steelers game plan worked pretty much to perfection. I can't really think of anything negative to say about it this time.
One thing that I have a negative is that, especially looking at from the commentators booth, with replays and all that, it's easier to see smaller things. And
Yeah.
one thing that I noticed for the basic problem that Seth Peters actually has with these. He's got quite a few incompletions there, but the biggest problem with the incompletions is that they like
Overthrown.
95% of the time he is under pressure on the move overthrowing receivers.
Yeah.
Like when Peters has the time to set his feet, get his technique correct, that basically every pass is absolutely perfect. But if the opposing defense gets even a little bit of better pressure, it doesn't have to be even that Seth has to start moving. It's enough for example, a defensive tackle to start pushing the guard into his face or something like that. Even a minor amount of pressure seems to affect him a lot more than it might have like the earlier seasons that he's been
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
Steelers.
Actually, you're right. Yeah, I did notice that too. I mentioned that a couple of times while announcing the game, and yeah, I'll take back my earlier comment. You're absolutely right about that. There have been way more cases this season that those long throws under pressure that he managed to do so well during the last 2 seasons, they have been overthrown. But it's still not something that to get really that worried about,
No,
because
but it's still something that
it is,
opposing
yes.
defenses can look at. Like if you get pressure on Peters, you don't actually have to have perfect coverage when it comes to your defensive backs,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he has a tendency to then be a little bit inaccurate with the ball. And if the ball isn't even near the receiver, then you don't have to have like a defensive back covering him. But
yeah.
that's something that can become a problem when we get to the playoffs and further, and that's something that I hope has been noticed also by the coaching staff and also by Seth himself, because that's something that we know he can do. He's shown that he can be a superstar quarterback that can act
He
also
can.
under pressure.
Yes.
It's just something that is a little bit concerning when it comes to what the opposing defenses can do to disrupt the Steelers' offense.
And so that's basically it. Just beat the Steelers' offensive line and get pressure on Peters, and then you have a chance to disrupt the passing game. Let's move on to the second half. The game was, well, of course, it wasn't over, but it felt very much that this was already over when the second half started. And two things that were like super obvious things to talk about during the second half is, well, the first one is obviously Alpha Jello. And I listened to you talk on Ruutu about it, so I'm just going to let you go again. So please do tell me what Alpha Jello did during the second half of the game.
Well, first of all, I just have to say that holy crap, that
Yeah,
guy's a monster, an absolute insane specimen of a human being, and I'm not even 100% certain that he can be a human being with the stuff that he does, because something is like that. Well, let's just put it this way: you're all right. You're playing in Europe, fine. You're not playing in the NFL or something like that. You're not in the world, like absolute top world class players, but you're still playing in Europe. You're still playing in Finland in the top division of Finnish American football, which is one of the toughest leagues in Europe. And by that, also one of the toughest leagues outside of the United States or Canada. And then you have a single person, that person being Alpha Jello, that can just take the ball and do whatever the hell he wants with it. Doesn't matter. You can have
but he
11
did he
guys.
did only one thing with it, though. I mean,
Yeah,
he was at the quarterback position a whole lot of the game. He has one passing attempt, which was an
yeah.
incompletion, an overthrown ball, and he has 18 rushing attempts, 200 yards gained, 3 touchdowns, and a 10.4 average. So basically, when he was playing as the quarterback, you knew that it was just going to be that they give the ball to Jello
Yeah, I did my
and
best
run with
Tony
it.
Romo impression in the commentator's booth. When I saw Alpha Jello as the QB, I just called it. All right, next play is going to be run to Jello,
Yeah, take a look.
and
Yeah, take a look. Next going to be a run to Jello. Yeah,
and
you're
then
a real goddamn.
like I'm a psychic or something,
Yeah,
because every
psychic,
time they did that,
definitely.
like Alpha Jello ran.
What a
But
great prediction, my boy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but it's insane, because you have one guy, you
Mm.
100% know what's going to happen. Like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
Alpha Jello's at quarterback.
Yeah.
All right, he's shown that he has thrown the ball technically once
Hmm.
somewhere in the distance. Not
Yes.
really a threat, but you still, all right, you should have, let's say, 9 out of your 11 guys should be watching Jello.
Pretty much.
And you still have the guy running at a 10-yard average, just basically doing whatever he wants. He was basically, if you would take a 99 overall in Madden
Mm.
and let him play with like the lowest of the low 40 overall creative players that don't have
Yeah.
stats at all, just
Mm.
doing whatever he wants, breaking all tackles. Like I saw one run he did. He got hit behind the line of scrimmage, broke a tackle. Next, he got hit at the line of scrimmage by two guys simultaneously, broke both of those tackles. Then he juked another, like a cornerback or a safety or something. Eventually, after being touched by 7 guys, I think it was Defalsi or somebody who actually got
Mm.
him by the ankle or something and tripped him, and he fell over. And that play was still like a 25-yard gain or something
Yeah.
on the run of
Mm.
Jello just doing whatever he pleases on the field. And that's it's like you can't really say enough about the guy, because even before the game, everybody knew that the Wasa Royals have one weapon that's better than everything else, and that's Alpha Jello.
Hmm.
Last week against the Roosters knew they only have one formidable weapon. That's Alpha Jello. The week before that, everybody knew they have Alpha Jello.
Mm.
Every week that the Royals have played, everybody is known that, all right, Alpha Jello is the Royals offense, and
Mm.
nobody can still stop him. It's
Yeah, and
insane.
that was so evident during the second half. But you also have to say that with the game practically being over, would that have? I mean, I don't believe it would have been quite the same if they had Jello as the quarterback from the start of the game. I mean, he still would have made a lot of damage, but I'm finding it very hard to believe that the Steelers defense wouldn't have been, changed their
That's true.
defensive lineup to combat that. Well, perhaps we'll see it again in the Maple Bowl. Who knows? I mean, if it happens, the Steelers and the Royals end up in the Maple Bowl, then we will see if Alpha Jello is still, starting as a quarterback. I mean, we'll get an answer to that when the Royals play against the Wolverines next week. And if Jello is the quarterback, and we're just going to see the same thing going over and over again, well, okay, sure. And then I'll say that very well, Royals should have just gone with a full Alpha Jello. Like have 10 other guys, and then you can have Alpha Jello just run the ball to the end. But it's not going to be that easy anymore after this one, if it even is relevant. If we take into account the fact that the game was very much already in the books at that point, and the Alpha Jello touchdowns themselves, they're all in the fourth quarter when the game was like even more over already, basically. And herein comes the second topic of the second half. Okay, the game was done, and they were, playing around, and Steelers scored 20 points, and the Royals got eventually 27 points. The Royals won the second half, but that doesn't matter one bit. But there was something weird that I just can't put my mind on, like why it happened. So perhaps we can discuss it and give some reasons to why this is actually a reality. Okay, so to anyone that perhaps didn't see the game, let me set the stage. The score was 55-23, and there are under 2 minutes on the clock. The Royals have just scored a touchdown by Alpha Jello. He completely just goes over the Steelers defense, runs around, and scores a 43-yard run. He scores, it's 23-55, and they kick the ball. Steelers gets it. They down the ball at around 15-yard line, perhaps. I don't have the stats right here. But anyway, it's deep in Steelers territory. 2 minutes on the clock. And there's already 32 points deficit for the Royals. So, I mean, let's be clear. There's no way the Royals have any chance of getting even in this game. There's just no way. Literally. I mean, even if they just gave the ball to Royals and let them run to the end zone, they still would have a hard time to score enough touchdowns with the time left. I mean, you would have to actually do tricks. So let's just make that very clear. There was absolutely no way the Royals could win this game anymore. And the Steelers knew it. And both teams have the playoff games already set. They're coming. They're knowing who they're going to play against. It doesn't matter how many points you score. And the Steelers take the knee. So they're clearly signaling, okay, I think this game is over. There's no more reason to risk both of our players. I mean, both of the teams are going to the playoffs as the top 2 seeds. There's no reason to risk anyone getting hurt at this point. So Steelers takes a knee, and the Royals take a timeout, signaling the exact opposite. So we still want the ball. We still want to score. Okay, fair enough. But why? Why do you want to do this? I mean, of course. I mean, yeah, we got to play every game to the finish. And we want to let our guys practice and get more repetitions and whatnot. And what happens when the Royals do get the ball? Alpha Jello runs a 37-yard run to the end zone in the end. So another Alpha Jello show. So, and they do get the touchdown. So now the deficit is only 25 points. Please, can you please explain to me what was the point of this exercise? I mean, if Alpha Jello had injured himself, or a Steelers player, an important player, had injured himself during these. I mean, Steelers were pretty much playing the second string guys, of course, at that point. But still, if someone important got injured, this conversation would be so toxic right now. So fracking toxic. So why? It felt so bad manners. I'm sure someone in the Royals organization would say, I just don't get it. And what a little complaining little, I'm trying to hold all the bad words right now, but it made no sense to me. And I had to make every effort of not being like really snide announcing the game because I just didn't understand what the hell was going on. So now I've made my rant. Now, can you please explain to me if there's any way that you could rationalize this?
No, I can't.
Okay.
It's simple as that. You made all the points. Like, all right, fine. You want to get reps. You want to practice. You want to have it at full game speed. You want to test your 2-minute drill. Whatever. It's not worth it. Like, at all.
So not worth it. They're going to the playoffs. I mean, the same situation happened. I mean, was it last time against like the Saints or something? And we were wondering why are they still playing for the whole end of the game? But that was because it was their last game of the season. They were going out of the playoffs, and they just wanted to finish. I can understand that. I mean, even in that case, the reason I was complaining about that event because the game was taking so damn long. And I think we even started the podcast by saying like is it still going or something like that.
Yeah, that game was insane. But
yeah. But this time, it's like you said, it's not worth it. So I don't get it.
Yeah, it's just like all the positives that you can gain, considering that you've already ran Alpha Jello basically. Well, the guy's an animal and a huge, like an insane athlete, but you still ran him so much that he has to be at least a little bit tired.
Yeah.
Like he has to at least be sweating or something. Like I don't know if he's feeling 100% at that point of the game. I honestly don't think he's a human being anymore.
Yeah.
But still, you are risking your number one playmaker, like just for a few extra reps of game speed. Basically practice
against the defense. That it's they're not trying as hard anymore.
Yeah, second string defense.
They just aren't. I mean, no one's going to make like this, head-on, full-on blitzes. Like, yeah, I'm gonna take that guy down real hard when it's under 2 minutes to go and we're already leading by 25 points. The game's already decided. No one's going to take, risks at that point anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, like all right, and I'm visualizing like some kind of a hardcore Royals fan now complaining to us about, well, what if the Steelers did it? And I
I
would,
wouldn't be okay with that either.
yeah, exactly.
No way.
I'm the thing that I'm thinking. Let's say here the Steelers are down by 3 touchdowns to the Royals,
Yeah.
and we're 2 minutes down. We know we've lost. Like even the fans know we've lost. Even if you want to believe that every game you can win, if you know you've lost and you see our coach put in Lamar Carswell and run him like multiple times, like sweep plays or whatever, just risking that, that's not okay to me as a fan. Like if I was a Royals fan, all right, I get the positives, but I would still be very concerned about the negatives. Like this time nothing happened, but still it's a little bit insane just because, all right, obviously you never go on the field expecting you're going to get injured, but injuries happen, and it's just I I just don't know. It's
Yeah. I mean,
just
we've
feels
had
bad.
we've had some criticism. The Steelers has had some criticism that they're still playing Seth Peters when the game's already over. Well, I mean, the fact is that Steelers just doesn't really have a second quarterback. I mean, Josh Van der Veer has taken some downs as a QB, but Steelers really doesn't have a second string guy that they want to. Really.
We don't have a backup quarterback. That's the thing. Like you have to understand. Even Steelers fans know we don't have a backup quarterback. We have a backup quarterback in the depth chart, and that's Josh Van der Veer. But he's a wide receiver.
Yeah,
he's
and
not a backup quarterback.
So if exactly. So if you put Josh Van der Veer to practice some QB downs, it's a possibility that he gets sacked and gets injured. Yeah. We don't want that either.
He's one of our starting receivers. Like you don't want to put your starting receivers on the line. At least with Seth Peters, he's played quarterback for long enough to understand how to not take a sack.
Yeah.
Like obviously you can tell a guy like Van der Veer, he is football smart enough to understand the concepts. Yeah. But when you're in the game, you're in the moment, you might have a little bit of a different mentality just because you don't have as much experience in the position, and you don't want to risk your starting receiver playing backup quarterback either. And when you go beyond that, the Steelers are in a similar situation as we were last year. If we don't have Peters, we're kind of screwed.
Yeah, we are kind of screwed. I mean, Josh Van der Veer can do something with the ball. I think he even threw a touchdown when he was playing against with the Wolverines, actually, I think. So, yeah, it doesn't mean the end of the world, but it's not going to be a good thing. And we got punished for that last season. I mean, Seth Peters wasn't fine in the Maple Bowl, and we didn't compete against the Roosters even as well as we could have competed against the Roosters in that particular game. But yeah, we recognize that, and we admit that as fans. I mean, we're not part of the team in any way. So that's fair critique. Steelers doesn't have depth on the quarterback position. Let's move on. That's fine. So yeah, we don't understand what happened during the end of the fourth quarter, but in the end, Steelers won, and we are now the winners of the regular season. So that's a first for the Steelers. The first position in the regular season is not something to scoff at all. And now we're playing against the Crocodiles. The Crocodiles beat the Butchers in their. I mean, this is a game I haven't watched. I haven't even taken a look at the stats really. All I know about this game is the headline that the Crocodiles practiced their passing game against the Butchers. Okay, fine, because even if I was like after everything happened during the first two games, or particularly the Wolverines Roosters, like there's absolutely nothing you can take away from the Butchers Crocodiles game. If the Butchers won or the Crocodiles won, a big score or a small score, there's absolutely no implications you can draw from that. So this was the only game in the Maple League that was absolutely meaningless even before it started, and it's still meaningless. Okay, it's as expected. Crocodiles won, so at least there's nothing weird about it. And that's all I'm gonna say about that game.
Yeah, well, the one thing that is like positive for this game is that the Crocodiles won, and they won convincingly.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that could have been concerning if the Crocodiles went in with their starters and weren't convincing in beating the Butchers. They
Yeah.
did. They went in with their starters, and they showed that yes, we are a much better team than the Butchers. Don't count us out in the playoffs.
Okay, sure.
That's basically the message we got here. It's and also like here you again the stats that you have here look very similar to the Crocodile stats that we've had, except that Spencer Cutlin now had a good day passing, which is the first. But that's also considering that the opposition is the Porvoo Butchers, who haven't been well. Let's just put it this way: they haven't been very defensive.
No.
When they've been playing any team, so it's hard to draw anything.
Yeah, I hope let's not diss the Butchers too much, because I want them to stay in the Maple League, and I hope they manage to get a bit more success next season. I honestly do feel like the old dynasty team Porvoo Butchers. I still hope that we'll see you next year, but it's a goodbye for them for now. So next week, it's on Saturday, 16:30.
Yes.
At Väylänniemi. Steelers will be getting a rematch against the Seinäjoki Crocodiles, and this time the game matters. I mean, we felt like the game against the Crocodiles last week mattered as well, for some more speculative reasons perhaps. But this time there's no excuse. It's the playoffs, and we need to win the game in order to get to the Maple Bowl to play against someone else than the Helsinki Roosters. And because of the strong showing against the Royals, and in every other game except against the Seinäjoki Crocodiles in that meaningless game, I'm still putting Steelers on top. But it's not going to be easy this time either.
I'm going to say that the matchups for the semifinals that we have here are, well, for the home teams, they're the worst ones. Because if the Steelers would be playing the Wolverines, I would be more confident, just because how the Steelers match up against the Wolverines. Because the Wolverines also play a similar style to the Steelers, I'd say. A lot more of this fast-paced and like high-energy, big play kind of offense. And also it's a very similar brand of football in my eyes that the Steelers play and the Wolverines play. Steelers just play it better.
Correct.
Whereas when it's Crocodiles, they are very different in style what the Steelers do, and they're very good at it. They're very good at controlling the ball, controlling the time of possession, which is what kills the Steelers. Like the style of play, the Wasa Royals should have been able to do that, but they just came super flat out the gate to Väylänniemi. And the Crocodiles, well, obviously, the home game they had, they beat the Steelers. They just need to do that again. That's actually as simple as it gets. They need to be able to do the same thing again. They need to be able to control the time of possession, control the ball. Don't go for the big plays. Just keep grinding, keep feeding Powell runs, get simple passes with Cutlin, like short hooks, slants, outs. Very simple stuff. Keep it simple and just grind the Steelers to dust if they are going to even try to win.
Yeah,
Obviously.
Last time we talked about during before the Seinäjoki game, we talked about the scenarios, because we felt like this game is for the Steelers to lose. So what are the scenarios that need to happen in order for the Steelers to lose? And as it happens, it went exactly as the worst case scenario we pretty much put forward. The Steelers offense can't execute, and the Crocodiles just grind away. basically, like you just said. And that is the key, winning this time as well. I completely agree with you. And it's also very, very good, like you said, that the matchups against the Crocodiles are so different compared to the Wolverines, which is a much more similar team to the Steelers in many respects anyway. So in that way, when the Steelers practice with the Steelers, they get much more value out of that against the Wolverines than a team like the Crocodiles, who like to grind and just run the ball with Powell for the most part. Perhaps this time they'll have other weapons too, as Cutland is getting his passing game up to par again. It's going to be a very interesting game, but this time it's going to be the Vainlanniemi, and that's never ever, like we've said this a million times. It's not going to be easy to win at Vanare. No way.
Vainlanniemi is the biggest home field advantage in the Maple League, and I would wager to say in probably one of the biggest home field advantages in all of Finnish sports.
Yeah, I mean the energy in the crowd is just, it's very, very much in there, and it contributes to the atmosphere. And you can see it with the players, because they like to play with the crowd. Like Tommy Kachoa and AJ Wentland, they come to the crowd and you raise their hands and they want to get a reaction from the crowd, because they are pretty loud over there. And I'll do my best to rile them up whenever I can. And I remembered even the what was the name of the guy with you in the booth in Ruutu?
Simo Takanen.
So Simo, I think even he complimented the mood during the start of the game, and that's not to say that there isn't a nice atmosphere in other places. Like I think Wasa Royals have always done a very good job of setting up the home games, but I do say that, like, as far as the organization should be complimented on, like, bringing the real American football feeling and keeping it up even in these Corona times. I mean, it's still
building a spectacle.
Yeah, it's still a spectacle to come and watch the game. I mean, there might not be all the bells and whistles and different kind of things for everyone in the game, but still the feeling when you go sit in the stands and when we shout in the visiting team and then we just roar in the home team, it's a great feeling. And that's something we need for the Finnish American football culture. And that's not something that's easy to overcome as a visiting team.
And when it comes to the actual game of football, for all the good things and also for all the bad things, the Steelers are a very momentum-based team.
Yes.
When the Steelers get rolling, like for example, you saw in the Royals game, when they get rolling, they just absolutely demolish things. And then the week before that, when they don't get rolling, it tends to get a little bit in their head. It's not only the Crocodiles game, but also last year, if you remember, the two losses we had in the regular season, when it was the Porvoo Butchers and then the Helsinki Wolverines, I believe, at Brahenkenttä, the away game. The Steelers didn't get rolling, and then it felt like at halftime or even before halftime, the atmosphere of the team just fell apart, and they didn't believe in themselves anymore. And that's what the Vainlanniemi and the crowd at Vainlanniemi really helps the team with, is simply just keeping up that positive atmosphere, keeping up that self-confidence that the Steelers team need to succeed. Because that's also, it's a very good thing to have, that when you are on the high of everything, the football is great, everything's great, you're making plays, that you can keep that up. That's a very important thing. But another very important thing is that when stuff starts to get difficult, you don't shut down, which has been a little bit of a problematic tendency to the Steelers team, with all these very high-flying, very intense personalities that we have on the team. Is a little bit of a double-edged sword, and it still hasn't been solved completely with the Steelers team, I'd say, is that when we don't get that perfect start that we're looking for, when we have to do these grindy games, what happens then? That's something that I feel the players and the coaching staff in general haven't perfectly solved yet. But Vainlanniemi, that helps. It helps immensely in that.
It does. Last year, I mean, this is a very nice segue. Again, last year, the last time we played against Crocodiles in Vanlanniemi, that was during the regular season.
It's a lot of points in that game.
A lot of points. 85 points for the Steelers and 55 for the Crocodiles. I just got the stats up here, and the Crocodiles won the first half. It was a very different Crocodiles too. Then was this Jonathan Baker ran very much a pass-oriented offense with the extra weapon of Christian Powell. And the Crocodiles were leading by 2 touchdowns, and this is not about me, but I do remember that particular moment was something that I really wanted to pump up the crowd and get them, like, bring more energy to the Steelers. And that was the moment when I stole something from the team that has always been only exclusively for the team. Like, every single time the Steelers play a game, as far as I remember, they start with the 3 questions. In Finnish, it goes, kuka voittaa? Steelers. Who wins? Who's going to win? Who's going to win? The Steelers. Who? The Steelers. Who? The Steelers. And that time I stole it for the crowd, because I felt like, okay, we need to get back into this game, and I want the crowd to bring some energy to them. So I yelled to the microphone, "Hey, crowd, I got 3 questions for you. Who's going to win this game?" And then everyone answered, Steelers. And then I repeated the questions, of course, twice as it goes. And that was a really great moment, and something that I really appreciate about the whole Vanlanniemi crowd, that they were just, knew exactly what was going to happen, went with it 100%. Really got a nice feeling and an atmosphere back to the stands. And whether or not it mattered at all, we did end up winning the game. So Vanlanniemi magic, for whatever it's worth, it felt like it worked in that last game against the Crocodiles. Perhaps we can bring something of that back next week.
Well, let's first of all hope that we don't get into a situation when we're down at halftime. That's
for sure.
That's the first step. Yeah. But if we do, we have Vanlanniemi to back us up.
Totally. It's been an hour since we've been talking in Londonese now, so I hope we have at least one listener now who is going to watch the show in English.
We like you, by the way.
Available.
We like you, one person who's still listening.
We do like you. We're not going to be naming you, but there is. I have proof that this has been requested from me, and now here we are providing you with this. It's been a great discussion again. Thank you for joining me for this special English episode, Mr. Tuukka Heiskanen. And as for all of you other Steelers fans, remember, next Saturday, 16:30 at the legendary, the one and only Vanlanniemi Sports Stadium. Be there as we battle the Seinäjoki Crocodiles for the spot in the Maple Bowl without the Helsinki Roosters. Last word, Tuukka.
Pretty good. Get there.
Touchdown Steelers, over and out.